Okay, so today we're going to talk about writing an annotated bibliography. So you may have done this before, maybe not. It's not very hard. If you have done this before, this is just going to be a review for you. If you haven't, just pay careful attention, make sure that you understand everything. So first of all, a lot of people want to know what is the difference between a bibliography and a works cited. You're all used to doing works citeds for this class. A works cited means here are sources that you have cited in this essay. And this word cite with a C, that just means quoting, summarizing, paraphrasing. So a works cited list means here is the list of sources that I am quoting and summarizing and paraphrasing within my essay. A bibliography is a little bit different because it means you consulted those sources, meaning you read over them to get an idea about background information on your topic or why people are on different sides. But you didn't necessarily summarize or paraphrase or quote from all of those particular sources. So annotated bibliographies are used more to get a general idea about what your topic is about and why people are on different sides and things like that. You don't have to actually cite it within your essay. So if a bibliography is a list of sources that you use to research and understand your topic, an annotated bibliography means you're giving summaries and evaluations of those sources, because that's all an annotation is. It means you're giving extra information about something, usually summaries or evaluations. So again, annotated bibliography means you've got a list of your sources, and in the correct works cited format, meaning you've got all that information there in MLA format. But then underneath it, you've given extra information. You've got summaries and evaluations about those sources that you've used to research your topic. So for this essay, again, remember you have to have 4 total sources, and they must all be library sources. So books, documentaries, articles from the USC Upstate databases. You can also, if you want to go in and physically pick up journals and magazines and newspapers and use articles from there, that's fine too. But no just Google searches and then, picking different articles that you found on Google. You can't do that. You actually, if you want to use the internet, which most people do, you have to go through the USC Upstate databases. And we've already had our session where the librarian showed us how to do that, reminded us of it, so you should all know how to do that. So we're going to actually put this into practice, how you write an annotated bibliography entry. And we're going to do that with this opinion piece by Art Lentini called Ban All Human Cloning. And so I'm just going to go ahead and show you this article. Now, I got to this by going to the USC Upstate Library website, and then I went to where it has the databases listed alphabetically. I clicked on O, and then from O I clicked on Opposing Viewpoints. And then from the Opposing Viewpoints in Context, which is the name of this database that I'm using, you can see right here, from that database, I found this article. Now, just to show you where the information is on this page, like I said, Opposing Viewpoints in Context is the name of this database. Ban All Human Cloning is the name of the article. USA Today is the name of the newspaper that it came from, but we would call that the publication. And then here's the date that it was originally published, and here's our author, Art Lentini. So we have all of this information that we can use for a works cited right here. Now let's talk about, let's go over this particular article. So I'm going to read it out loud. You can follow along, or you can mute it if you want to read it yourself. Those of us who support a ban on all types of human cloning do so because we believe that ultimately no good can come from the procedure. There are only two uses for a cloned human embryo: to create a cloned human being, or to create a human life in the lab in order to destroy it so cells can be harvested for other purposes. Creating human life for the purpose of sacrificing it, even for beneficial research, is morally and ethically wrong. That is why it's not permissible to harvest the organs of a dying human being to save the life of another. The involuntary harvesting of organs from a convicted murderer prior to execution, it will never happen. The taking of vital organs from consenting terminally ill patient, no doctor will touch it. Some say that a human embryo is not entitled to the same protections as a human baby. Then why does the federal law that imposes criminal and civil penalties for killing a bald eagle provide the same punishment for the destruction of its eggs? Because both acts result in the death of a bird the government believes is important to protect. Must human life be endangered to be afforded the same protection as animal life? There's also no good reason for cloning human embryos to produce stem cells for study. In fact, such research siphons off precious funding from more promising and fruitful research into the therapeutic uses of adult stem cells which already exist. Both sides of the debate on cloning agree on one point. Cloning for the purpose of producing a viable cloned human should be prohibited. So why not pass legislation to ban at least that form of human cloning? Because it's impractical. There's no way to monitor the thousands of embryos that would be created if any form of cloning is permitted. And what if prohibited reproductive cloning occurs? The only way to stop it once discovered would be to destroy the embryo. That's precisely the problem with human cloning. Inevitably, it leads to taking an innocent human life. So here we have this opinion piece on human cloning, and this particular source is saying we must ban all of it because there's so many problems with allowing any form of it. So now let's look at what we're supposed to do. So if you're going to use this article in your annotated bibliography, okay, you've read it, now what do you have to do with it? Well, first of all, you want to summarize it. So I just read the article to you. If you need to pause it and go back and look at it again and think about it a little more, you can do that. But basically, what you want to do is summarize what is this source saying. Now, you're going to do that in a couple of ways. One, you're going to explain in your own words, in just a sentence or two, what the source is talking about. And also you're going to incorporate a quote. So you want to look through that article and find the best quote. Now you don't actually have to do this. This is not part of your writing assignment. I just want to show you how it's done so that you understand. So we've used the same article, so we're all on the same page. Now again, you want to use quotes and summaries to explain what the source is saying about your topic. So you're pretending you're writing about stem cells. Or cloning, whichever one. So here's an example of what you could do. In his essay, Ban All Human Cloning, Art Lentini, so right off the bat, this is how I want you to start. Is it an essay? Is it a documentary? Is it a book? Tell me what kind of source it is. Tell me the title of your essay or your book or your documentary. And then if there's an author, give me the author's name. So again, boom, 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 we have the type of source, the title, the author. Give that to me in each of your summaries right off the bat. Now we have this illustrate. So this is using those signal phrases that your They Say, I Say book talks about that are really good to use. So we're going to use some of those signal phrase verbs to or to link what our author is saying with the summary that we've put into our own words. So again, in his essay, Ban All Human Cloning, Art Lentini illustrates that his anti-embryonic cloning stance is based on his assumption that the only reasons for this type of cloning are to create a cloned human being or to create and destroy the embryo in order to harvest its cells for scientific purposes. So this is just an overall summary of what the article is about and what Art Lentini's stance actually is. So just to remind you, the best way to get a summary is to read your article, think about it, put it away, and then come back and write from memory. Don't go back and look at the article again, because that might be a little too tempting for you to copy and paste, and you don't want to use that copy and paste method. So now we've got our summary. We've put into our own words what Art Lentini believes. Now we want to incorporate our quote. So you want to go through that article, find a good sentence or pieces of sentences to talk about what Art Lentini is saying. So now we're going to start with our quote. Lentini argues that, quote, ultimately no good can come from the procedure, end quote, because it is, quote, morally wrong and ethically wrong. Now notice we've again started with this introduction, so don't just throw your quotes in there. You don't want to have a period here and then start with this ultimately no good. You want to introduce your quote. And how do you do that? It's pretty simple. Just say your author's last name, or if there's no author, again, you can use your title, and then have another signal phrase. Lentini argues that. This is our introduction. Then we have our quote, and notice this isn't one full sentence. This is pieces of a couple of sentences, and we've even put words in between. You don't have to do it this way, but you can. This is just showing you that when you use a quote, you can do whatever you need to do to integrate it into what you want to say. And so we've got our quote, and now we're going to have that last piece of bread. So remember, introduction is the first piece of bread in the quote sandwich. Here we have our quote. We've said the author's name. There's no page numbers, so we don't need anything in parentheses here. And then we can follow it up with that last piece of bread. He asserts that the potential scientific benefits don't justify terminating innocent human life, even if they're only cells. So there's kind of three small steps to this summary part. Again, identifying what it is you're summarizing, and giving, a sentence or two in your own words of what overall is this source talking about, and then having a quote, and then with that quote having that last piece of bread included. What is this quote really saying? What is this author's overall point? Now, why is it so important to use these phrases like Art Lentini illustrates and Lentini argues? Because if you take them out, it makes it sound like it's your argument. So if I just said, if I started, for example, over here, the only reasons for this type of cloning are to create a cloned human being. If I say something like that, it doesn't sound like Art Lentini's argument anymore. It sounds like mine. So you want to always make sure you're referring back to your author's name or the title of your article to make it clear that you're not saying this is your viewpoint. You're saying this is your source's viewpoint. So make sure that you're referring back to the author or title of your source so that it's always clear. This is what this person is saying. You might agree with your source, you might disagree, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're letting us know that it's the source that you're summarizing and quoting from, and that these are not necessarily your beliefs about this topic. So that's question number 1 for your annotated bibliography, when you summarize the sources and include that quote. Now we can talk about number 2. Evaluate credibility of sources. And this is a lot easier than it might sound. So you want to explain the qualifications of the source. The author, first of all, the author of the organization's credentials is important. We have an author here. How do we know his credentials? Well, first of all, we can go back to that article and see at the bottom, at the end of it, we have a very short biography. Louisiana State Senator Art Lentini has twice sponsored bills to ban all forms of human cloning. So we know he's a Louisiana State Senator. That's some credibility right there. That's not quite enough. I mean, it's not bad. It's something. It's better than nothing, and if that's all you have, that's okay. But let's Google him anyway and see if we can find anything else. So if we Google him, okay, and so this is one of the only times I will say that you can use Wikipedia, that it is a good source. You're not going to cite Wikipedia, even though you're using it to find information about your authors in order to talk about credibility. You're not then going to cite Wikipedia. Why? Because that gets to be a mess. All I care about is that you have the articles on your topic and that you've looked up their credibility. You don't then have to go in and cite where did you find out their credibility, because you're just kind of using this as background information. So here we have our little short biography here. So he's an attorney in Louisiana. Again, was a Louisiana State Senator. We already knew that before. To get a little bit more information, let's look at his education. So he has law degrees from Louisiana State University. So that's a little bit more information that we can put in. We could look up more stuff about him, but I think knowing that he was an attorney and a state senator and that he got his law degrees from Louisiana State University, that's enough to say about our author. So we'll put that information into our number 2 for the annotated bibliographies, our discussion about why is it credible. But the other thing that we can do to make this even more thorough is to look at our publication. So this was published in USA Today. So the other thing we can Google, if we don't already know about it, is USA Today. Now, if we were to click on the USA Today page, I'll go ahead and show you briefly what it looks like. You'll see that it's a news site. So it's got information about different news things that are going on right now. However, just like with our author, it's probably better to go ahead and look at what another source has to say. And so, once again, Wikipedia is a good source for background information. So what does Wikipedia have to say about USA Today? Well, it says it's a national American daily newspaper, founded in 1982, has one of the world's widest circulation of any newspaper. Yes, so here we see some different pieces of information about it. Remains the widest circulated print newspaper in the United States. So this is adding to its credibility. This newspaper would not be so big if it were terrible and never gave good information. So the fact that it's so popular, that it's still around today, makes it a credible source to use. So if we go back to our discussion of credibility, we can put this information together. So we've looked up Art Lentini, and we can say something like this. Art Lentini is an attorney with law degrees from LSU, that's Louisiana State University, by the way, as well as a former Louisiana Republican state senator, and we've got the dates that he was the senator, who sponsored bills to ban human cloning. And so again, just like with our summary, the best thing to do is look up the author, read his bio, and then write from memory. Don't write looking directly at the information. You do want to make sure the information is correct, so after you've written it, you can go back and double check and make sure that you got things correct. but writing from memory will help keep you from plagiarizing. And then when we talk about the sources, again, we looked up the publication, which was USA Today. And so here's what we can say about that publication. USA Today is a daily newspaper that has been published since 1982 and is the most widely circulated print newspaper in the U.S. Notice that I have italicized USA Today because it's the name of a publication. So make sure to do that even in your annotated bibliographies, because you will still lose points if you are not properly using quotation marks and italics for your titles. So when we put all of this information together, we have our summary with our quote, and then we have our discussion of credibility. Why do we trust this article? So this is what you're doing for your annotated bibliography. Now I want to show you, I've already shown you that page on the database, but I want to show you something else that lots of you will find helpful. So at the bottom of this page, it gives us our citation in MLA format. So for this one, we've got our information right here. All you have to do potentially is copy and paste it into your Works Cited page. However, please remember that it still needs to be in Times New Roman 12-point font, and a lot of times when you copy and paste it, it won't be in the right format. Remember that this has to get tabbed over, this second line. So just know that if you copy and paste it, some of that formatting might get messed up and you'll need to go in and fix it. Other things are, see how short this line is here? It might be that when you put this on your Works Cited page, this part ends in the middle of your paper. And so, or in the middle of your page setup. That's not going to be correct, because this particular line is going to have to go until it naturally goes to the second line on your Works Cited page. So just to like explain what I mean a little better, remember on your Works Citeds, for example, so here this goes to 10A. So that's the page number. And then we wrap down to the second line. Why does it go to 10A? Because with my picture and stuff up here, it can't go any further. If I had copied and pasted it, it might have ended somewhere else on here. It might have ended at 11. And then we'd have this big space between where the Works Cited entry ended and where the page ends. And that's not the correct format. So everything should go on this top line until it can't go anymore, because it's going to drop down to the next line. So that's what I mean by the formatting when you copy and paste, that it's not always going to be the correct formatting. So in some cases you're going to have to go in and mess with it. If you have problems, if you're trying to do the formatting and Microsoft Word is giving you problems, then don't copy and paste. Just look back and forth between the information that you have, type it into your paper. That might be an easier way to do it for some of you. The other thing to mention is that this citation on this page is correct, but they aren't always correct. So it's better than nothing to use what you have here, but I always encourage you to double check with at least something like easybib.com, or check with the OWL at Purdue website, or if you have an MLA formatting book, like if you have Bridging the Difference from last semester, double check to make sure that these citations are correct, because if they aren't, you are going to lose points. And again, this is something you can always come and ask me about if you're not sure about it. Alright, but that's what you're supposed to do. So going back to where we've put it all together, this is what you're going to do for 4 different sources. When you put it all together, put it in alphabetical order. So again, this starts with L, our Works Cited entry up here. And so you want to make sure to alphabetize all 4 of your sources, but all 4 should be something like this, where you have your works cited entry, then your summary with the quote, and then your discussion of credibility. So use this as a model as you're putting yours together. And email me if you have any questions or talk to me in class. And I will answer any questions that you have about your annotated bibliography. And that's it for this discussion.